Hi everyone, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to do this Shining Garden bracelet for you, which features some of our Potomac crystal beads as well as our button, and then also featuring some Czech glass in our leaf shape, our flower cup, and our Czech daisies, and some Rizzo beads. If you need any of the materials to make this bracelet, you'll look on the left-hand side here. We'll do a little drop down. You can purchase from me online there or write down and get a list of all the different materials that are used. I am working on one of the bead on it boards in the newer poppy pattern here. And that board really makes it easy to see what you're working on because it has a nice bright background and surface. The whole project I am keeping together with some .006 wildfire beading thread in the green color. As I work with the thread, I'll also work with a size 10 needle and have my thread zap handy to cut the thread off the cord. You will be using about 6 feet of your beading thread, or I'm sorry, 16 feet of your beading thread, so keep that handy. And you may also want some super new glue handy as well. The whole bracelet is actually built on a base, and I'm using Matubos in the white Lila Vega luster color running down the middle. So those are going to be your 8-0 seed beads, which have a really nice large opening. That's kind of, the Matubos are a little bit bigger than the standard Japanese 8, so they'll have a bigger opening, which will make it nice and comfortable to take all of these beads through. It also features some Czech glass leaves in this green iris color, as well as the Czech flower cups in the pastel burgundy. 1.5 strands of the Czech leaves were used, and exactly 1 tube of the pastel burgundy flower cups were used. When you're looking at the bracelet here, it's right about for a 6 3/4 inch wrist. If you know you have a little bit bigger wrist, you may need a second tube of those flower cups. In addition to those Czech shapes, I'm also using one of our newer shapes, which is the Czech daisy in the pastel gray. That brightens up the bracelet a little bit, and 1 tube will get you the whole bracelet. In addition to those Czech beads, I have my Czech Rizzos, which are a little extended drop bead. These are in the crystal vitriol color to really kind of make it pop and brighten up the whole bracelet. As far as the crystals that I used, 1 tube will do of each. I'm using the metallic green color, and the metallic green is a 4mm round Potomac crystal. And then I'm also featuring the metallic purple in the 3x4mm rondelle. To make the project kind of pop a little bit more, I am using 2 11-0 seed beads in the Toho seed beads, and these are both permafinish. It's permafinish lilac and permafinish green teal in the 11-0s. The cool thing about this fringe bracelet is it uses a lot of different materials. You can pick a lot of different things to use in it, and it teaches you a good technique that you can use in a multitude of different ways. To get started, we are going to build our base with our 8-0 Matubo seed beads, so get ready for that, as well as adding some thread and needle to get ready for your project. So to get started, I have about 4 feet of gray wildfire thread on my needle, and I'm going to pick up a bead that's not included in my design and create a stop bead. To create a stop bead, I'm just going to take the bead down to the very end, leaving about 2 inches, and go back through that same bead 2 times. That's going to stop my beads from my center row here from falling off the end. Eventually, I'll be putting on the clasp, and as I come back down, I'll add the clasp, so I only need enough here at the end to very much knot on. Now I'm going to grab my Matubos, and I'm going to string my Matubos the length of my bracelet, not including what I want the clasp length to be also. With a fringe or a fluff bracelet, it gets a little smaller because by the time it kind of puffs up, you're going to need more room because it gets bigger. So go ahead and string on a bunch of these 8-0 seed beads. Mine is going to be right about 6.5 inches of 8-0s. So once you have the 6.5 to 7 inches or so of your beads, I'll show you how it's fitting me here. I have a little bit of playroom, and then by the time I add my fringe and my clasp, it won't be tight on my skin. It'll fit pretty nicely. So to continue on, we're going to start the fringe, but first I'm going to add my button. To add my button, I'm going to pour out a couple of my seed beads here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up 4 of my 11 O's here, go up through the back of the button. When I'm coming out the front of the cup button here, I want to go diagonal. So the cup button has 4 holes to it. Rather than going beside it, I'm going to go diagonal because I'm actually only going to be using 2 of the holes. I'm going to put on 3 of my seed beads, 1 of each of those lilac colors, and then 1 of the green perma finish. I'm going to go back down through the faceted button. When I'm out the back of the faceted button here, you can see that I'm out again on that diagonal. And I'm going to add 4 more of my 11s. Once I have the 4 11s, I'm going to sew in through 2 of my 8 O's. Now that I have the cup button on, or the faceted button on there, I'm going to start adding my fringe. I will reinforce the button as I come back down and across the project. That's going to happen multiple times, so you'll have a bunch of opportunities to add fringe. Also, if you would want to, you can also add and connect to the other loops in the buttons as well. I'm going to pour out some of my metallic green 4mm crystals there. And once I have those, I'm going to add them every 2 beads. Whether or not you want to make a loop or a fringe look, you can decide that kind of as you go. I'm going to be doing both loops and fringe. To make my fringe here that I'm going to start out with, I'm going to add 2 of my 11s, 1 of my crystals, let those drop down. And actually what I'm going to do is add 1 of my little daisies here before my crystals. So 2 11s, daisy, crystal. I'm going to add another 1 of my 11s, go back through those beads that we just added, and then back through 2 more 8 O's. When I pull the thread nice and tight, you can see that first little fringe created with the crystal and the daisy that are held in by the 11. So again, I'm going to add 2 11s, a daisy, the 4mm crystal, an 11 O seed bead, go back through that crystal, daisy, and the 2 11s, and sew down through 2 more of my 8s. So I'm not going back through the last 11 that I added, and that's what I'm using as an anchor right after the crystal there. It almost looks like a little berry hanging out. Again, 2 more of my 11s, the daisy spacer, the crystal, and an 11. Go back through the crystal, the daisy, and the 2 11s. Then back down through 2 of those 8s. So you can see now I have 3 of my little crystals here. They'll sit and they'll go every kind of which way. The fun thing about the bracelet is that it's very organic looking because you're going to have a lot of fringe hanging off. So I'm going to continue down the whole length of those 8 O matubos, adding in the 11s, the crystals, and the daisy spacers, spacing them out every 2 of my matubos. Once you come to the end, adding that first little fringe, you can see I'm coming out and I have 1 extra bead. I'm just going to sew through that extra bead, making sure that I'm not going through that stop bead that's there. And you can do this at this point or you can do it at the next point. I'm going to go ahead and add my loop for my button to fit through. For my loop for my button, I'm going to be using my 11 O's here and just making a loop, much like we added the button, except it's just going to be a loop of the galvanized 11 O's here. If you do have a clasp that you want to add, you can go ahead and put that on now as well. You would just use a wire protector if you're doing a metal clasp. If you're doing much like a button here, same fashion, you can do it just like this. Once I have enough beads on to establish my loop, I'm going to sew back through my first 2 seed beads and come out 1 bead before my last fringe. Again, I'll get an opportunity to reinforce this loop as I come back down from the other side. When I come out the end here, I'm going to add my next piece of beading, which is going to be my leaves. Unlike the fringe, I'm going to add the leaves in a loop fashion. This can be done with any of the beads or with the leaves like I'm doing here. And what I'm going to do for the leaves, I'm going to bring out a little bit of that brighter green color. Dump some of those out. And onto my needle are going to go 2 of the 11s, then 1 of my leaves, and 2 of my 11s. I'm going to skip through 2 beads again. That'll make sure that my leaves here go in between those 2 pieces of fringe, and that loop's just going to hang out right there on the end. I'm going to make sure to pull my thread tight there so that way it sits in a nice little V section like that. Again, I'm going to continue on doing the same thing, adding 2 11s, then a leaf, then 2 11s, and sew through my next 2 8-ohs, so that way I'm coming out of a bead where a thread's not already coming out on the side of one of my already done fringe pieces. As the piece gets bigger and more fringe to it, you just kind of need to keep an eye and make sure that your threads do not get twisted or tangled up in another piece. And you can see the leaves now sitting kind of opposite here and hanging out between the crystals. So I'm going to continue on adding those 2 seed beads on the side and the leaf right in the middle. I'm at the end here getting ready to add my last of my leaves, and I'm going to go back and reinforce the button. To do so, I'm going to go up one of the sides going through those 4 seed beads, going through the faceted button, and whenever you come out the top of a button or a cut button or this faceted button, you always want to try to make sure to grab that first bead there that you sewed through as you're going up through the button, so you don't have to fit your needle in a tight space. Same thing as I'm going down, I like to make sure I'm going through that bead at the same time as my button. I'm also going to go through the beads below it and through the first 2 beads here. When I'm coming out these first 2 beads, I get ready to add my next portion of my fringe on. You can see how it's looking fun so far with the leaves and those crystals on. We're going to brighten it up now. I'm going to add my first of my flower cups with my rizzos as well, and then I'll come back through adding some more of the crystals. So for the flower cups, I'm using this pastel burgundy. I'm going to dump those out. To add a little brightness and to have fun with these Czech daisies, we're actually going to put a Czech daisy inside the flower cup, and I'm going to put one of the rizzos, this rizzo in crystal vitriol, I'm going to put that underneath it to look like a little petal. When I'm coming out of my Matubo, and I'm coming out that second one, which is going to be the same placement as my previous crystal. So the first pass through, I'm going to be coming out the same place as that. If you want to, you can also go off, and you can go every 3 beads instead of every 2. That's kind of up to you, depending on how full you want it to be. Obviously, the more you go through each bead or every other bead, the more you're going to have kind of that fluffy fringe look. When I'm coming out of a bead, I'm going to put on one of my 11 O's. I'm going to put on a Rizzo and a flower cup, one of the Czech little daisies there. You can see it's going to kind of sit right in the middle of the flower cup. And when I put that on, that Rizzo is going to act as a little leaf there on the side of the bead. I'm going to put on the center of my flower, which is going to be one of the green, back down through the daisy, the flower, the Rizzo, and the seed bead. So back through 2 of my Matubos, and again they have a nice hole size, so it's allowing me to go through that rather easily. And you can see then that first look of that little flower on. Again, 11 O goes on, my Rizzo goes on. And the Rizzo has 2 different finishes because it's that one side is the crystal vitriol and one side is the crystal, which makes a little fun addition to the look of the project. I have that 11 O on top. You can see I'm getting ready that I'll need to add thread. And I'm going to go back through the daisy, the flower cup, the Rizzo, and the 11 O, back through 2 of my Matubos. And you can start to see then the effects of the flower cup there, along with the leaves and the crystals starting to take place. So I'm going to go down through the whole line, getting ready to add more of my flower cups and my daisies, and getting some of that bright sparkle in there from the Rizzos. Now that I have my flower cups in for the first row here, I'm going to go back up through the project, and at the same time, just like I did on the other end, I'm going to reinforce my clasp going through the loop that I had created for my button to fit through. If you want to at this point, you can also tie off your thread end here with the thread that you are using, or you can keep it on till the end. I'm going to keep it on till the end so that way after these next 2 passes I can tie it back off. After I come down the side here of my seed beads, I'm going to do another pass back through my bracelet. This time I'm going to do every 3 beads. I'm going to go down 3 beads, 3 of those Matubos coming out. So I'm changing up the number that I'm coming down. And every 3rd bead I'm going to add a little bit more color and a little bit more shine to the project. To do so, I'm going to be adding an 11 O, a Rizzo, one of the Potomac crystals, and again this one is the 3x4 millimeter in the metallic purple, another Rizzo, and another 11 O. Take my thread and needle back down, 3 more beads. Once I'm out those 3 core beads, I'm going to do the same thing, adding in some more of that color. The hard thing with the fringe is just to make sure that as you're working with it, that it does not, that your thread does not get twisted in it, because it really wants to, because there's a lot of fringe and beads hanging in the way. So just make sure to kind of control that a little bit. I usually try to push my beads off to the side and have my core exposed, and that makes it easier for me to then pick up the thread, make sure I'm going back through my 3 beads here, bringing my needle out after those 3 beads, making sure that thread doesn't get twisted anywhere. And I'm going to go in, adding in those Rizzos and the crystals with those 11 O's on the side the whole way down the length of the bracelet, and then we'll come back up one more time. So finishing this row here with the rizzos and the crystal in the middle, this gives me an opportunity to do one more of my reinforcement here on my button. I'm going to go up through the button. If you wanted to also, this would be a good time to add the extra seed beads that you could link in from one side to the other. Going down the other side then, I'm going to come out the end, and then I'm just going to go back every single bead here and add in just the seed bead, crystal, seed bead, alternating, going through literally every bead of my two crystals, both my 4mm and my 3x4mm rondelles. I will do the green with the purple beads and the purple with the green out every single bead, adding an 11, crystal 11, and back through. I've gotten to the end with that progression of the two crystals, and all I'm going to do at the very end here, since I already have the thread coming out right at the end here, I'm going to go ahead and reinforce this loop one more time. If I wanted to, I could do the peyote stitch on the loop as well, just to make it a little bit thicker and give it a little bit more substantial look. But I'm going to go back and reinforce this loop, and then all I have to do is take off my stop bead and tie the two ends together. If you want to, after tying the two ends together and doing this, or taking off the stop bead and tying the two ends together, you can also weave back through the project a little bit if you would like. After doing so, I'm also going to take some of my super new glue and glue the knots that are in here from adding thread. So I have these two thread ends there. I'm going to go ahead and tie my knots. I'll also use the opportunity to burn down any of the thread ends as well, and then that'll finish off my project. Once I have all the thread ends here burnt down, I'm just going to show you exactly how the bracelet fits, because it was a little bit hard to show that it does get a little bit larger. So you can see, remember, I went back the whole way till those two ends were touching. That gave me a little bit more room for the clasp here. And I'll show you the bracelet clasp. And I still have some playroom that it can move around my wrist, but it does definitely, you want to make that center core so that way it's not super tight on your wrist, that you have room to get the bracelet off and on. You can slide about 2 fingers underneath, so there is some movement in the bracelet itself. It does really feel fun on the wrist. You can really use a variety of materials, anything. The fun shape of the leaves and the flower cups really make this bracelet stand out. If you do need any of these materials to make the bracelet, you can go back to the beginning of the video to the little drop down menu where you can purchase online from me by following the links there. Also, if you need any of the materials, you want to take a list to your local Potomac Bead Company store, you can go underneath the video here to the video descriptions. There's a little show more button there. You can click on that and that'll take you to the drop down, which lists what was used in the bracelet as well. As always, if you like this video like it, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. That way you can get regular updates on different products like these daisy flower spacers here that we got in, all the different flower cups, our Potomac crystals, as well as all the different designs using those same beads as well. Remember, you can always search on the site as well if you want to see other examples of how to use these flower cups or the PC rondelles. You can search in the little magnifying glass right underneath our header too. So that way if you wanted to see other projects featuring the same materials, you can do that also right there when you're on our homepage for the YouTube channel. You can also check us out at PotomacBeads.com, again, where you can shop with us online, check out where the different store locations are, and check out all the different stuff that we carry and that we have and that we manufacture as well. As always, everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you do want to stay connected even more with me, you can join our Facebook group, which is for beading and jewelry making. check that out. You can join the group, talk to other people that are like-minded beaders like you that do bead weaving and wire working, everything in between, answer questions, give opinions, and chat a little bit more with us there. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and have fun beading and making this fun flower cup fluff bracelet.